Hey guys. So I want to talk to you about the outline that we're building. So the whole point of the outline is actually it's created to help you actually get your ideas and thoughts together for with regard to the answers for each question. It's going to serve as kind of like really detailed notes, or better yet, it'll serve as a script for your oral presentation. So it's really working in support of that final presentation. So what we need to know about the outline as we start to build it, we're finally actually going to answer the questions with this outline. So for each question, you need to answer with your learning experience. How do you show me your learning? That's the toughest thing. But there are two major ways that you can answer these questions so that you can effectively show me what you've learned. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the best ways to answer these questions. Now, the first way is in how you structure your answer. Learning is a change, right? You go from not knowing something to suddenly knowing something. So what you want to show me is a change. One of the best ways to show change is to talk about the past, the present, and the future. This is the perfect structure for answering your question. You explain how you so you identify what you've learned. You explain how you dealt with that learning situation in the past. You explain what you learned about that in my class, how you learned it. And then you talk about how you might apply it in the future. There's two parts of this past, present, future structure that demonstrate learning. One, you show the change between the past and what you did in my class. You really want to do that. That shows growth, learning, change. The future is application. You understand it so well you can apply it in an imagined future situation. That is how you show you've learned. Change and application. So you really want to structure your answers to these questions: past, present, what we did in our class, future. That's the perfect structure for answering these questions. Let me give you an example of what that might sound like. So let's say one of the things I want to answer for question number 3, I want to say, oh, I learned about the gap. Okay, now I got to structure that answer into past, present, future. So here's how I do it. In the past, I just accepted what sources would say to me. In high school, for example, I just took the information that I found from my secondary sources and reported on it. I never really thought to question it. I just accepted it because it was published, so it must be true. That was how things worked in the past. I noticed my thing is going. But, okay, perfect. Sorry. So that's the past. I'm trying to see if it's moving again. So that's the past. Present, you want to discuss something that you learned with regard to how you learned the gap. For example, so I might say, in your class, Bonnie, after reading Kant's, we discovered that not just because it's published does it mean it's true. There are issues within the research or missing perspectives. So I learned to poke holes in what I was reading. And I did that in my own discussion of sources when I put them at the table and I had to stop and think about where the perspective, what they were missing. And I realized none of them were looking at students with disabilities. That was the biggest gap, the missing elements in all of their research. That's how I learned it in your class, Bonnie. That's the present. And in the future, I might say, well, when I'm going to be a doctor, you want to get really specific. Get specific to your hobbies and your fields. Don't just make up some bullshit because it's going to be harder to make it applicable. But if I was really going to be a doctor, make it applicable to your hobbies, your interests for the future. Where in other situations where you might apply it, I might say something like, if I was a medical student, I might say, well, when I'm a doctor and I have to I'm a doctor and I read research coming in talking about new procedures, I may not so quickly jump on board. I might want to look at their research studies and see, does the population that they were researching, does that match the population that I'm servicing as well? And if it doesn't, I should question that and maybe not rush into some kind of procedure just because it's new and found. I might want to dig into that research and see if they missed any particular perspectives. So that structure, past, present, future, That's going to work really well for demonstrating change. That's the first major element to building a good answer outline, past, present, future. The other element that you want to make sure you have lies in your examples, because you got to show me. You can be all talk, prove it. So what do I mean by examples? You're going to have to literally go into your work, and where did you actually do that? You might want to go pick up specifically. You might say, well, I showed that I know what the gap is because in the website that I built, I have a whole discussion of my sources, but it ends on my critical evaluation. Or I have this whole podcast that I created that's just talking about the gap. I'll pull that up where I'm specifically talking about the gap. It's doing it again. And I need to fix my shit. Sorry, guys. And then deal and showcase that example. So for every present moment, for every what you learned in my class, you have to have an example that supports what you did in my class. If you're saying, I learned this, what's the thing that you did, the actual artifact? Because you're going to show when you do the video, you want to bring that up. And we'll talk more about that later. But for the outline, you want to be able to pinpoint it, to be able to say, in the present, I did this in the website or the podcast that I created at minute 5 and 3 seconds in. I have a clear discussion of, you really want to get that specific because you're going to have to show it to me, prove it to me with a very clear, specific example from what you did in my class. You can use as many examples as you want. One is good enough. If it's not the best example, you might want to look for other examples, but clear examples of proof that what you're saying you learned, you did learn. You have example of proof of it in the work that you developed for my class, right? Okay, so those are the two things you want to have in your outline. The structure, past, present, future, and for the present section, with whatever you're saying you did in my class, that you learned that in my class, an example, a very specific, clear-cut example from the work that you did in my class. You should be able to pinpoint it, show it to me, take screen caps of it. I should be able to see it, you know what I mean? And the last thing I want to say, so I uploaded for you guys some examples of A quality outlines. You should go look at them because they're so radically different. Example 1, she has a lot written out. And now the reason why is because she was literally using it as her script. She was reading it word for word during her oral exam, which is fine. I have another one, the second one, it's very short. He's just getting the points in. And then in his actual presentation, he elaborates on those things. And then the third one, he actually includes the images, his specific examples. He went and took pictures of them so he knew exactly what he was going to be showcasing. I don't know what's going on with my thingy, but I'll fix it in a bit. Nature of online shit. So consider looking at those outlines. And if you're struggling like I'm struggling right now, I also created a template for you guys. You can mess with that template so it better suits your needs. You can put as much or as little. I will say the more detailed, the better, unless you're one of those people that works really great off like bullet points and then can elaborate later. But use that template and then you can add or remove from it. I wouldn't remove too much because it has the basic structure in it, but you can add to it how you choose to use it. Remember, it's your outline. It's your guide for your final oral presentation. So you want it to meet your needs as much as possible. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'm going to see what's going on with this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.